Kurt, we had what a game last night. Suns, Warriors. The Suns extend their win streak to 17. It's the longest win streak in franchise history, tied with the 2006-2007 season. And this Warriors team now is 18-3. They're both tied for the top seed in the West. What was your takeaways from the game?
I think first off, and I wrote about this, nobody please use the word fluke and Suns in the sentence together anymore. Like that was not a fluke last year. This team is legitimate. They are incredibly good in the clutch with Chris Paul. Their defense was third best in the league coming into this game, and Monty Williams admitted it after the game. Steph Curry just missed some shots, but Miles Bridges did a good job on him. They threw a lot of bodies at him. This is still a good defensive team, especially with Ayton in the paint. And I think the biggest thing with them is that they're versatile. If you want to go slow, they will speed you up. You want to play fast, they will slow you down. They can beat you in a variety of ways. They're kind of good at a little bit of everything. And I think that makes them a really good regular season team and capable of making a deep run. So having said all that, yeah, I'd still take the Warriors in a 7-game series. What did you take away from this?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. When I watched the game, Kurt, I wanted to text you and I was like, okay, man, like the Warriors are losing this game. Like despite everything, it was still a close game. And I think that's my big takeaway. Despite 9 turnovers in the second quarter, despite 6 turnovers in the fourth quarter, despite Steph Curry, who's playing at an MVP level, only shooting 19% from the floor, despite Andrew Wiggins having, under 12 points, it was still a 1-point game going down the stretch against a Suns team, albeit without Devin Booker because he left due to injury in the second quarter. So in my mind, I was like, this is reminiscent of Michigan State in the college football playoff, where they still ranked Michigan above Michigan State, even though they lost in the head-to-head. And everyone was like, wait a second, how does that work? They said Michigan's the better team. And then when Michigan State got blown up by Ohio State and then Michigan blew out Ohio State, everyone's like, okay, you're right, Michigan's a better team. I think we're seeing that play out in the NBA right now with the Warriors and the Suns.
I think that's a really good analogy. And both of these teams will look very different come the playoffs, right? I mean, obviously Klay Thompson comes back, James Wiseman comes back, the Warriors will look different, but teams evolve too. The Suns will look a little different. And, and they'll have Booker. These two teams, by the way, play again in a few days and in Golden State. And I think it'll look a little different. You're not going to see Curry kind of miss that many, but the turnovers were the big thing. And you got to credit the Suns defense, but they were just sloppy with the ball at points. I mean, in the end of the day, 24% of their possessions ended in a turnover. If you turn the ball over 1 in 4 times down the court, Corey, you're not going to win a lot of games, man.
Yeah, there was one moment in particular down the stretch where Steph Curry turned the ball over with under 4 minutes to play in the game. That doesn't happen. What? That doesn't happen very often. And the other thing I thought was crazy was there was this one time when Curry slipped, right, and gave the ball to Jordan Poole. And there were 7 seconds left on the clock. It's crunch time. Who do you want taking the shot if you're the Warriors, right? Like that's kind of the situation that to me was kind of indicative of the whole night. I was like, man, they're turning the ball over and Jordan Poole is taking the shot when they're down in the fourth quarter and they need to get back. That's not ideal, right?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. And by the way, Jordan Poole, 16 in the first quarter, red hot, played fantastic. And it's going to be interesting to see when Klay comes back. Like Curry's still going to be Curry, but those are the guys that are becoming interesting. It's Poole, it's all the other guys on the perimeter. Iguodala, can they adjust to playing with? Eventually, Klay's going to get a lot of touches and a lot of shots. If Poole's getting fewer shots, can he stay as engaged and as hot? And I think that really does fall to Curry and the team to keep those guys engaged, right?
Absolutely. And one thing I love, by the way, just a quick interesting point. Draymond Green's defense on Kevin Durant recently, and I saw him guarding DeAndre Ayton. His defensive assignments are just amazing. Granted, DeAndre Ayton still had a double-double, a 24-point double-double, but still, you would think in that matchup, Ayton versus Green, that would be a field day, or Kevin Durant versus Green, that would be a field day. He's managed to limit those guys. And once again, a 24-point double-double is still like a very good game for Ayton. But still, I'm just like, how in the world is Green managing those incredible defensive assignments?
He is playing at a defensive player of the year level. I mean, it's really too early to have, a serious conversation there, but he is playing at that level. I think the two best defenders in the league so far this season have been him and that guy from Greece who plays in Milwaukee, whatever happened to him. Like, those guys have just been fantastic defensively to start the year.
Giannis is up for like every award every year. I feel like it reminds me of this one time, Kurt. I was looking at the 90s. I was just doing some research. Look at the 90s. You look at Michael Jordan's stat line, like what he won. You're talking about like scoring champion, defensive player of the year, MVP, finals MVP, like every award. Yeah. Like, and to think about that prowess, being able to be that good on both sides of the ball consistently every single year. I mean, well, only a few players can do that. And Giannis is doing that consistently. Like, how are you still top 3 voting for all these? I mean, it's unbelievable how he's been able to be that consistent. So another game I want to check out your thoughts here. Knicks Bulls. The New York Knicks have undergone one of the most compelling, I guess, transformations recently with Alec Burks taking the spot of Kemba Walker. First, let's just start there. What are your thoughts on that before we head into tonight's matchup?
Thibodeau had to finally do something. I mean, 20 games, 19 games in season. He had no choice. Their starting 5 was getting outscored by like 16 points per 100 possessions. You can't dig a hole to start every game if you're trying to win, and then have the bench come in with Derrick Rose, who's been phenomenal, and Emmanuel Quickley. I mean, it's been a great guard combo. That's why Burks is starting. Normally you kind of take one of your best guards and put them up, but he doesn't want to mess with that. Thibodeau does not want to mess with that guard combo off the bench. Burks had 25 against the Nets. Like, he fits in. They needed to do this to get things rolling. The starting lineup still got outscored by the Nets, but that's partially because the Nets start a couple of pretty good players in that Harden guy and Durant. Like, it's tough to outscore that starting 5, but I think you had to do that if you're the Knicks. You had to shake things up. They've just kind of they've lost, I think, 4 of 6 now, 4 of 7. They've stumbled a lot of late, and they're better than that. And so I think this is one of the steps they needed to kind of get rolling again. And eventually Kemba will get another shot, but in the rotation, but it just hasn't worked with him.
It just, you're absolutely right. It hasn't worked. And Alec Burks, back-to-back over 20-point games, shooting over 40% from the 3 ball. He adds a really nice touch to that. But just the general flow of watching that Nets game, I texted you, Kurt. I was like, I know that the Knicks, at the time, they were down double digits. And I said, man, I know that they're getting kind of blown out here early in this game, but they look good. Like, they look like a good team. They came back and almost took the victory away from the Nets, but the Nets were able to hold it. But I guess going forward, do you think that the Knicks can really build on this? Do you think this is a turning point?
I think so. I think that they are better than their record indicates. The problem is partially, this is a deeper, harder East to come out of right now. I mean, Miami is better than they were a year ago. Atlanta's got confidence, and Trae Young's been playing fantastically. And so I think that, like, night in, night out, you've just got a little bit tougher competition than you did, when they finished 4th last year. But also, I think that they're just better than they have been. And I think, look, their defense hasn't been that good. I don't think I mean, he's hoarse right now from yelling at them about the defense, right? Like, and that end will get better, but I think the offense will flow. But I mean, Julius Randle has not played at the level he expected. And part of this was that he got 2 free throws last night, and he's frustrated with the physicality and not getting some calls he thinks he deserves. He's got to be more efficient. He's got to put up numbers. I don't know that he was going to be able to replicate that all-NBA season. That last year might be peak Randle, but he's better than we've seen this season too. And I don't know if part of that was that he had a chemistry with Elfrid Payton that wasn't there with Kemba Walker, and maybe he develops that kind of quickly with Burks and gets in better positions where he gets the ball and gets better opportunities. We'll see. I think they need more out of him. Evan Fournier hasn't quite lived up to his contract either, but I think these guys are better than they've shown to start the season. So I think the Knicks will find a group.
I thought that technical by Randle down the stretch, I mean, that you can't do that technical, and it brought the game out of reach. And when you're the franchise player, I understand the passion, but I just thought that was it was not a very good move. I will say, though, that it is interesting when you look at that combination of Toppin, D Rose, the way they push the floor. Yes. That's exciting. That's something to look forward to. But yeah, and I will also add on the Julius Randle thing, just before we put a pin in and move on. I will say that people have been saying that about his career the entire time, right? Like we might have got this and that's all we're going to get out of him. And he continues to elevate, wins most improved, becomes a legit franchise player, all NBA, all-star. So I don't think this is the ceiling for him. I think he'll continue to shift our ideas about him.
Yeah, and I just think sometimes the ref, like last night, I think the ref gets in your head a little bit, and you've got to get that out of your head and kind of get back into being you. And I think he'll be there.
And you mentioned the East is tight, and we know the Nets are at the top, but the Bulls are second. Tell me about this Bulls team. What do you love about them?
That fit is better than I expected. First off, I thought they'd be in a shootout every night before the season, right? I thought that they would not be able to stop anybody with the personnel they had. They're a top 10 defensive team. They've been a good defensive squad, and part of that is that they're giving Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball minutes together, or good minutes, and those guys are kind of disruptive, but they've just been better positionally. They've played good team defense, and they've maybe gotten a little lucky with opponents shooting at points, but at large, this has been a good defensive team, and then they're just explosive offensively. And part of that is, we knew Zach LaVine was going to put up numbers. We know Vucevic, who's kind of out right now, but he can score. But I didn't think DeRozan was going to fit this smoothly. And just that second shot creator who can go in there and just kill you from the mid-range. Just he can get to his spot and knock it down. And there's a few guys, we know Durant can do those kind of things, but there's some other guys. Chris Paul's great at this. DeRozan can go get a bucket whenever they need it. And this is a legitimately good team. This is a team that has taken a big step forward. And I think I underestimated the defense, and I underestimated how good they were going to be before the season. They are a legitimate playoff team in the East.
And we saw the Knicks overcome that double-digit deficit to make it a game, take the lead going into the fourth against the number 1 team in the East. How will they fare against the number 2 team in the East? That's going to be an interesting test. It's going to be an interesting test. We'll see just how legit this Knicks team is moving forward. I want to move to the Celtics because this is a team where you and I, Kurt, we talk about this a lot. I have been in the past, I said that this is like a dynasty in the wings, right? Like they're quietly building a dynasty. They have some talented pieces with, a player that Kevin Durant said at the Olympics, Jason Tatum is probably going to overtake his scoring record at one point in time. But what is happening? This is a 500-ish team right now. What's going on in Boston?
They just don't seem to flow all that well enough. It just seems like there's a lot of isolation and a lot of contested shots and a lot of dribbling and not necessarily player and ball movement that's moving the ball into better positions for more open looks. It's a little drive and kick and hope it works. And it's tough because there's so much talent on this roster, and Brown missed some time. Jaylen Brown missed time, but they should be better than they are. And it's frustrating to watch them and see them not get there, not be able to kind of find that. They're not great defensively, even though they should be better than they are. This team confuses me because on paper, I'm with you. I keep looking at this like they've got the pieces of the kind of team that won a lot of games in the, 2 elite wing players was the recipe for winning. It's what the Clippers have gone with, with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It's what teams wanted to build. They've got it, and they still can't win. And it's a frustrating team to watch. I pity Celtics fans that way.
Yeah, the sum is not greater than its parts, which is fascinating. No. And I think when you look at my question has always been when you look at Tatum and Brown, it seems like it's more. My question is, whose team is it? That's always been my big question. In my mind, it's Tatum's team, but when you watch the game, it's Brown's team, right? Yeah. And then when you think about like the pieces that you said, like Marcus Smart, one of the best defenders and role players in the game of basketball. You got the coaching staff. You have everything's aligned, and the pieces on paper should meld. Horford back, like the institutional knowledge, what it means to be a Celtic. He knows what it takes to have success there. And yet. So it's one of those questions like, what is going on? And at what point are they going to have to make a change? But look at the Sixers, who have also kind of been struggling this season, 500. Obviously, Embiid's been out with something. They're going to play tonight. What's your big takeaway from this matchup? What are you looking for?
Well, Philadelphia knows what it is, and when Embiid's out there, its identity is really clear. We know who the alpha is on that team. We know what they're trying to do. Look, they're just not the same team without him. Tyrese Maxey has stepped up, though. He's been fantastic this year. Well, they've been pretty good when he's out there. We'll see. Again, the Celtics are fully capable of putting together one of those games and handling. They've got the bodies to deal with Embiid. They can handle the 76ers. But, man, I wouldn't bet on it. They're also capable of losing this game by 20. I don't know what I'm going to get night tonight with the Celtics, or at least with the Sixers. Like, again, we've lost 8 of 10 or 8 of 10. I think they've dropped. We know why. Like, Embiid was out. And now that he's back, they'll right that ship.
I think that the Sixers have some things in common with the Nuggets on their reliance on their big man, right?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that? I mean, reigning MVP from Nikola Jokic last year is now going to have, assuming probably a larger load on his shoulders now that Michael Porter Jr. is out with a back surgery. What's your thoughts here on the Nuggets? Where do they go from here?
They're just the basketball gods have added in for them. I don't know what they did, but I mean, Jamal Murray with the ACL. This is really concerning with Jermichael, not Jermichael Green, but with
Michael Porter Jr.
Michael Porter Jr. Sorry, I just went half a second there. Just remember, he fell. He was a top 5 talent who fell to 14th in the draft because of medical red flags about his back. Remember, he had a surgery and only played 3 games at Missouri. I have talked to people in front offices who have seen that report, and it scared them. Remember, Denver took the long haul, right? They sat him had another back surgery, sat him what would have been his rookie year, sat him out an entire year to get it right. And it's worked, and he's built himself up to the point they gave him a max contract this summer. He was going to be a key part of what they were going to do this year. And it was kind of like, hey, if he keeps playing like he did in the playoffs and we get Jamal Murray back, we're contenders. And now this, them 3 back surgeries at age 23 is very concerning, Corey. And it's got to at some point it's hard for the Nuggets have been decent. They still have the MVP, and frankly, Jokic has been as good or better than average. He's been as good statistically as last year, but at some point, don't you feel like this is just going to have to catch up with them? It's just too much.
I think that, yeah, it's a pretty tough recipe for success in the Western Conference when you look at the Suns and the Warriors playing the way that they are.
Yeah.
Not to mention the Jazz or the Lakers with LeBron when he finally gets back in the lineup regularly. Those are just some of the teams, some of the challenges. We're not even talking about the up-and-coming teams like the Timberwolves who are starting to put it together. So when you're looking at that recipe, I mean, there's only so many options. So I think it is concerning. I'm curious, though, from your perspective, you mentioned the max extension. Knowing that history with the back surgeries, I mean, do you think it's a wise thing to give Michael Porter Jr. that extension?
I think after his playoffs, if they hadn't extended him, well, we say that now. The theory was when he hit free agency, he would have gotten it from someone. But I'm surprised they didn't. I mean, the last year of that, it's a 5-year max. The last year of that is only half guaranteed. It's only 50% of the money is guaranteed. I'm surprised there weren't more conditions for games played or, with Joel Embiid's first contract after his rookie year, they gave him the max, but there were all sorts of very specific medical conditions tied to the back injuries and the foot injuries that he'd had. Like if these flare up again, we're able to get out of the contract. They were able to, or it would be lessened. There would be incentives for games played type of thing. I'm a little surprised there wasn't a little more of that in it, but he'd been fairly healthy for a few years. So.
Yeah, and he has such a unique skill set too. That's the hard thing too. It's like in the NBA, you look at guys like James Wiseman or Michael Porter Jr. I mean, that there's some injuries there, but what he brings to the table, no one else brings to the table. So it's almost like, okay, well, we can't just go get another Michael Porter Jr. Like that just doesn't exist. So are you willing to take that risk? There are some guys where you think, okay, well, if he goes down, like we can get someone like him. We can get another shooter. We can get another big guy. We can do, but to be 6'10", like, with his skills, it's just rare. So that's an interesting scenario. We'll see how that plays out. But I'm very, very interested to hear what you have to say about the Minnesota Timberwolves, because Karl-Anthony Towns in his 6th year, he's starting to put it together. The numbers that he's putting up are reminiscent of 90s big men. I mean, 20 plus points, almost a 9 rebound, almost a double-double, averaging, and what is bringing his team slowly up the Western Conference standings. What do you think about Towns and what they're doing in Minnesota?
Yeah, they're on a roll now. They've won 7 of 8. They've found a groove. We've waited so long, and Towns has waited so long for this, right? I mean, Andrew Wiggins was going to be the guy next to him, except it wasn't Andrew Wiggins, right? They go get D'Angelo Russell. He's going to be D'Angelo Russell. What we get from him now is kind of what he is, right? He's a good number 3. He's a point guard. He's a good player, but he's not a number 2. Anthony Edwards is a number 2. Anthony Edwards brings that athleticism, brings a lot. I mean, he's still developing in just his 2nd year, but he brings so much to the table. And suddenly this team is playing well. First off, they're defending. They are a top 10 defensive team in the league, which Towns has really taken a step forward. He was a problem on the back end. He was out of position. He's become a better defender. And I don't mean this in the Giannis Antetokounmpo or even, frankly, somebody rookie like Evan Mobley that's just blocking shots everywhere. But he's become the Marc Gasol kind of model, or where he's big and he's in the way, right? Like he knows where to be to make it difficult. He's big and he puts his hands up. It's hard to shoot around him. He's become better at that. They have become a top 10 defensive team. And then offensively, Towns brings the entire package to the story. So we actually have a story coming out. I sat down, I got to talk with him one-on-one, talking about how excited he is that they're kind of finally broaching this in Minnesota. They are finally kind of reaching the potential around him and with him that he's expected, and how much fun that's been in Minnesota. And plus the challenges he's been through. Nobody was hit hard. I mean, not only did he have COVID, but I mean, he lost his mother, he lost multiple family members. And we talked about his passion for vaccines and that as well. So it'll be out over Thursday and Friday at NBC Sports, and you come find it. It's going to be interesting. He is a thoughtful and caring young man who's very passionate about what he's passionate about, but he's very excited about how good this team is. I mean, have you got to catch some of them?
Yeah, I think when you look at that trio you mentioned, they've been trying to find that trio for years. Yeah. Like you mentioned, Andrew Wiggins, D'Angelo Russell, like Karl-Anthony Towns. They've been putting around pieces. Finally got Anthony Edwards in, that showed a flash of a spark of something exciting that was happening in Minnesota, where the weather was dismal for a very long time, very long time, since like Kevin Garnett. It's been bad for a while. But then you look at his numbers, Karl-Anthony Towns' numbers, and this is what I mean is, like, he's been balling, out there in Minnesota, but almost in obscurity. Like 25, like the past few seasons, you just look at his numbers, it's 25 and 12, 21 and 12, 24 and 12, 26 and 11, 24, 25 and 11. Like I said, these are like big men numbers from the 90s, but no one knows because the team isn't very good. And now you're seeing an element of they've actually put the pieces around him, and D'Angelo Russell has 19 and 9 in assists. Like now everything's starting to come around them, and it's starting to become very intriguing. And it kind of reminds me of what they built in Milwaukee. I'm not saying that Karl-Anthony Towns is Giannis. I'm just saying you take time to build something special around someone who has talent that is pretty unique. Just give them time to put something together. And now they're kind of in the run here in the Western Conference.
They are. They looked like, before the season, I thought maybe they could try to make the play-in. They look like a solid, not only, maybe they're the 7-seeder, but they look like the kind of team that will actually make a playoff round, right? Like, at least that they look right now like a team who could be there. And that is a huge step forward for this team and a huge boost in confidence, because I think they've been to playoffs like once in the last 15 or since Garnett left or something. This is not a team that's really made the postseason, and that's about to change. It feels like that's going to change. There's a lot of season left. Towns also has not gotten all the recognition he feels he deserves. He has been playing at an all-NBA level this year. I think he's going to get some, long season. I think he's going to get a level of recognition. I think this team is good. And by the way, they're just entertaining now. They're fun to watch. It is hard not every night. Anthony Edwards is looking to end somebody. He just wants to get to the rim and end somebody. Karl-Anthony Towns he can shoot from 3. He can pound it inside. Whatever you need him to do as a modern big, he's capable of doing. And the this has become a interesting team to watch.
And I misspoke. D'Angelo Russell is actually 19-6 with assists, not 19-6. But yeah, it is fascinating. I think the fact that they're in Minnesota gives them a lot more luxury of time. And this is the same thing that Denver had the luxury of. Like, no one's really paying attention on a day-to-day, but no one's checking their phone for updates on what's happening in Denver every hour, right? Yeah. Like they do in New York or like they do in Los Angeles or some of these bigger markets. So you actually have time to figure things out. Milwaukee, the same thing. You had time to figure it out with Giannis and Chris and Drew, that trio that they had. So the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns now has a little bit of time, who knows what they could do? But right now, they're exciting.
They definitely are.